Are you guys back for another chapter of The Pearl That Broke Its Shells? Was I a good reader? I was reading out loud. It was the first time that I'm reading out loud something, and I was like, I was getting nervous, to be honest. I was like, And then when I was editing the video to post it, I was like, does anyone like this? What the hell? Anyway, it's maybe your favorite book reader. I don't know. Am I your favorite book reader yet? Am I? I don't know. Anyway, we are back for another chapter. I don't know how many I can cover today. Yesterday, I had to stop reading and I only covered the first chapter because I literally was like, oh, I got work later. I gotta go sleep. I didn't go for work. I'm gonna go for work maybe tomorrow. Today, yeah, you know what? Today, let's read as many chapters as we can. Yeah, and then we'll see where this goes. Cause I don't want to just leave a chapter just like that. Hold on, I'm getting thirsty. I'm a thirsty bitch. Hold on. Good water. That was good water. Anyway, I ate so much. Holy. Anyway, I keep saying anyway. I'm right now in the middle of reading another book. It's called The Swallows of Kabul. I'll show you right here. So this is what I have just started reading. I am a couple pages in and it has started so strong. Just started with stoning of a woman right away. She's apparently a prostitute. We are not sure because we haven't gone that far yet. Also, look at this cute little bookmark. I actually have really cute bookmarks. Look at this one. It's Harry Potter. I'll show you a couple more I got here. Oh yeah, right here. Look, more Harry Potter. Okay, and then I'll show you a very cute one, but to be honest, I don't like it all that much. I love it for the way it looks, but to use it, I feel like it's ruining my books. It's ruining my books for sure because it's leaving this, wait, I'll show you guys. It's leaving this mark. Yeah, here. You guys see that? It's leaving a mark and I'm like, it's ruining my pages. Here, look. Anyway, moving on. So yeah, but I find it so cute. Also, it just keeps falling out of my book. And I'm like, well, what's the fucking purpose at this point? Why? But it's so cute. It's so cute. Alright, so the last we were here was we talked about bachaposh, which is what happens when people in Afghanistan have to turn their daughters, when they don't have any sons, they turn their daughters into boys until the daughters hit puberty, and once they hit puberty they're turned back into women and married off. So we covered that yesterday. We only had talked about bachaposh a little bit. We had read about Rahima. We were introduced to Rahima and Rahima's sisters. There are 5 sisters. They have a dad that is dealing with addiction. And I'm not ruining anything because like we did cover it together. Remember? We love Rahima's mom. We only read a couple pages, so I don't expect you guys to already be so in love with them yet. I am. I can't hide it. Okay, let's go for our chapter 2. And we're gonna read as much as we can today. And I hope you guys like it. I hope you guys enjoy. And feel free to, like, leave a comment, talk to me, tell me if I need to, like, be nicer or talk better or read better, that'd be nice. Because yesterday I was like while I was editing, because clearly I was stressed. But yeah, please talk to me. If you want me to read something else, please let me know. I want to read anything, but mostly I love reading history literature. I'm really into literature. I don't know if you guys can tell with my choices of books so far. I don't know if you guys would be able to tell, since I'm literally like only like 2 books and so forth. Well, 1 book and 1 chapter, and let's get that right. All right, enough with that. Chapter 2. Shekiba. You guys see that? See that? See? Okay. Shekiba. Your name means gift, my daughter. You are a gift from Allah. Who would have known that Shekiba would have become the name she was given? A gift, passed from one hand to another. Shekiba was born at the turn of the 20th century in an Afghanistan eyed by Russia and Britain. Each would take turns promising to protect the borders they had just invaded, like a pedophile who professes to love his victim. The borders between Afghanistan and India were drawn and redrawn from time to time, as if only penciled in. People belonged to one country and then the other, nationalities changing as often as direction of the wind. For Great Britain and the Soviet Union, Afghanistan was the playing field for their great game, the power struggle to control Central Asia. But the game was slowly coming to an end. The Afghan people resisting outside control. Chests expanded with pride when Afghans talked about their resilience. But parts of Afghanistan were taken, little by little, until borders shrunk in like a wool sweater left in the rain. Areas to the north, like Samarkand and Bukhara, had been lost to the Russian Empire. Chunks of south were chipped away, and Western's front was pushed in over the years. In that way, Shekiba was Afghanistan. Beginnings in her childhood, tragedy and malice chipped away at her until she was a fragment of the person she would have been. If only Shekiba had been prettier, something at least pleasing for the eye to gaze upon. Maybe then her father could have hoped to arrange a proper marriage for her. When time came, maybe people would have looked at her with an ounce of kindness. But Shekiba's village was unforgiving. To get to Kabul, one had to ride 1 week crossing a river and 3 mountains. Most people spent their entire lives in the village, in the green fields surrounded by mountains, walking their dirt roads that connected one compound to another. Their village was a valley, dark soil nurtured by the nearby and tall peaks, giving a sense of enclosure of privacy. There were few dozen clans, extended families, who had known each other over generations. Most people were related to each other somehow, and gossip was the way to keep busy. Shekiba's parents were second cousins, their marriage arranged by Shekiba's paternal grandparents. Their family, like many others, lived off the land. Each generation splintered the family's land so that people would have place to build a home. If they decided to leave the clan's main house, Shekiba's father, Ismail Bardari, was the youngest in his home. His older brothers had married before him and filled the compound with their wives and children. Seeing there was no room for home and his new bride, Shafiqa Ismail picked up his chisel and set to work. He was lucky though, in that his father bequeathed him a lot with such a fertile soil that his share of that his share of crops would be guaranteed. He was the hardest working of his brothers, and his father wanted to ensure that the land's potential would be realized. There were many hungry mouths to feed, and a good yield could bring in extra income for the village. His brothers lacked Ismail's instinct. He had a gift. He knew just the right temperature at which to plant, how often to till the soil, and the perfect amount of water to make crops grow. Ismail's brothers resented him for being their father's favorite. They pretended to prefer living at the main home. In the end, he surrounded the house with a wall of mud and stones to give it privacy as a proper Afghan home needed. Before I continue, there's a freaking lipstick mark right here. Lipstick mark on my freaking book. It's my lipstick mark, in case you're wondering. Okay, wait. Okay, I need some tea. Whoa. That was good tea. That was very nice tea. Right. Ismail brought his nervous wife to their new home, surrounded by a small plot of land that bordered his brothers. Standing outside, she could see her in-laws coming in and going from the house. Their burqas blew spots on the rocky landscape. When the women headed in their direction, she would hurry inside and cover herself, embarrassed that her belly was swollen with a child. But Shafiqa's in-laws found her dull and timid. Over time, they took less interest in her and her children. The women sighed heavily when they spoke with her and whispered to her husband when she wasn't near. Had Shekiba's father been like most other men, he might have heeded most whispers and taken a second wife. But Ismail Bardari was unlike some other women and stayed with the one wife he had. However, his mother and sister felt about her. Shekiba's brothers, Tariq and Munis, were the only real link to the clan. Shafiqa watched over Shekiba and her little sister Akila, nicknamed Bulbul, because her light, melodic voice. Melodic voice reminded Ismail of Bulbul. Oh, let's read that again, shall we? Akila nicknamed Bulbul because her light, melodic voice reminded Ismail of the local songbird. Tariq and Munis would come and go between their father's and their grandfather's home, acting as couriers of clothing, vegetable, and news. The boys were very well liked by their grandparents and valued as male heirs. Ismail's mother, Baba Shagul, often said the two boys were the only good thing to come from Shafiqa. The boys overheard many hateful comments, but they knew better than to share everything they heard. Shekiba and Akila didn't realize how little their father's family cared about them, since they spent their days close at their mother's side, sometimes too close. A clumsy two-year-old Shekiba changed her life in a blink of an eye. She woke up from a mid-morning nap and set off to find her mother. Shekiba heard the familiar sounds of peeling in the kitchen and stumbled into the cooking niche. Her small foot caught on the hem of her dress, and her arm flailed into the air, knocking a pot of hot oil from a burner top. Before her mother could reach her, the oil flew out and melted the left half of Shekiba's face into blistered and ragged flesh. I hate when kids get burn injuries or any disfiguring injuries. I hate it. Back to the book. Sorry, I had to just share that. Shafika screamed and doused her daughter's face with cool water, but it was too late. It took months to heal, as Shafika diligently kept Shekiba's face clean, using a compound the local alchemist had mixed for them. The pain got worse as her skin fought to recover. The itching drove Shekiba mad, and her mother was forced to wrap her hand in the cloth, especially while she picked away at the dead blackened skin. Fevers came so high they made the toddler's body tremble and rip, and Shafika had nothing to offer. Nothing she could do but pray at her daughter's side, her body rocking back and forth, and beseech Allah for the mercy. Baba Shagul came to see Shekiba. When she heard about the incident, Shafika anxiously waited to hear any helpful advice her mother-in-law might be able to offer, but Baba Shagul had none. Before she left, she suggested Shafika pay closer attention to her children and muttered thanks that it hadn't been one of the boys. Shekiba's survival was nothing short of a miracle, another gift from Allah. Though her face healed, she was not the same. From then on, Shekiba was halved. When she left, only half of her face left. When she cried, only half of her face cried. But the worst part was the change in people's expression. People who saw her profile from the right would begin to smile, but as their view turned the corner beyond her nose, their own face would change. Every reaction reminded Shekiba that she was ugly, a horror some people would step back and cover a gaping mouth with a hand. Others would dare to lean in, eyes squinted to get a better look. From across the road, people would stop in their tracks and point. There! Did you see her? There goes the girl with the half face. Didn't I tell you she was horrid looking? God only knows what they did to deserve that. Even her aunts and uncles would shake their head and cluck their tongues every time they saw her, as if every time they were freshly disappointed and shocked to see what she looked like. Her cousins came up with twisted names for her shola face, as her skin resembled the lumpy soft rice, babalu, or a monster. That one thing she hated more than the others, since she too was afraid of the babalu, the creature that frightened every Afghan child in the night. Shafika tried to keep her sheltered from the comments, the jeers, the stares, but it was too late to save Shekiba's self-esteem, a commodity people didn't value anyway. Shekiba's self-esteem, a commodity that people didn't value anyway. I told you it's really well written. She covered Shekiba with a burqa when she saw people approaching their home, or on a rare occasion when family ventured into the village. Remember, Shekiba means a gift. You are our gift, my daughter. No need to let others scoff at you. Shekiba knew she was horribly disfigured, and that she was lucky to even be accepted by her immediate family. In the summers, the burqa was hot and stifling, but she felt safer within, protected. She was not exactly happy, but was satisfied to stay in the house and out of sight. Her days passed with fewer insults. That way, her parents withdrew even more from the clan. The resentment toward Shafiqa's aloofness grew. Tariq and Muniz were both energetic, and being just a year apart in age, they could pass for twins. When they were 8 and 9, they were helping their father with field work and running errands in the village. They usually ignored comments they heard about their cursed sister, but Tariq had been known to throw back insults from time to time. On one occasion, Muniz came home with scattered bruises and foul temper. He had more than he could take of local boys pestering him about his half-faced sister. Father John had gone to boys' home to make amends with his parents, but he never reprimanded Tariq or Muniz for defending their sister, Shekiba. Akila was smiling, always smiling, would sing nursery rhymes in her sweet bulbul voice, and kept her mother and Shekiba's spirit lifted as they did the chores. They were happy keeping to themselves. They didn't have much, but they had everything they needed and never felt lonely. In 1903, a wave of cholera decimated Afghanistan. Children shriveled up within hours and succumbed in their mother's weak arms. Shakiba's family had no choice but to use the poisoned water that coursed through their village. First Muniz, then the others. The illness came quickly and it came strong. The smell was unbearable. Shekiba was stunned. She saw her siblings' faces grow pale and thin in days. Akila was quiet. Her songs reduced to a soft moan. Shafiqa was frantic. Ismail quietly shook his head. Word came from the compound that 2 children had died, one from each of Shakiba's uncles. Shekiba and her parents waited for their own bellies to begin cramping. They nervously cared for others, watching each other and waiting to see who else would become ill. Shekiba saw her father put his arms around his wife's shoulders as she rocked and prayed. Akila's skin was graying. Tariq's eyes were sunken. Muniz was quiet and still. She was 13 when she helped her parents wash and wrap Tariq, Muniz, and Akila, the songbird, in white cloth, the traditional garb for the deceased. Shekiba sniffled quietly, knowing she would be haunted by the memory of helping her mourning father to dig the graves of her teenage brothers and delicate Akila, who had just turned 10. Shekiba and her parents were among the survivors. It was the first time in years that the clan had made an appearance. Shekiba watched her uncles and their wives come in and out of house, paying their obligatory respect. Before moving on to the next home grieving their dad, it went without saying that they pitied Shekiba's parents, not so much for the loss of their 3 children, but for the disappointment that Allah could not spare one of the sons instead of the defective daughter. Luckily, Shekiba was numb by then. Thousands died that year. Her family's losses were notches on the epidemic belt. 1 week after her 3 children were buried, Shafiqa began to whisper to herself when no one else was looking. She asked Tariq to help her with the water pails. She warned Muniz to eat all his food so that he would grow up to be as tall as his brother. Her fingers moved through the yarn of the blanket as if she was braiding Akila's hair. Then Shafiqa started sitting idly, plucking individual hairs from her head, one by one, until her scalp was bare. Then her eyebrows, Then her lashes disappeared. With nothing left to pluck, she resorted to picking at the skin of her arms and leg. She ate food but gagged on pieces that she had forgotten to chew. I know guys, I know. Her whispers became louder, and Shekiba and her father pretended not to notice. Sometimes she would listen and giggle with lightheartedness alien to their household. Shekiba slowly became her mother's mother, making sure she bathed and reminding her to go to sleep at night. A year later, in the same dismissal month of cows, Shekiba's languishing mother decided not to wake up from her sleep. It came as no surprise. Ismail held his wife's hands and thought how tired they must have been from ringing they had endured. Shekiba brought her cheeks to her mother's and saw that her eyes had lost a desperate glassiness. Mother John must have died looking at the face of God, Shekiba thought. Nothing else could have brought the look of peace so quickly. The house sighed in relief. Shekiba bathed her mother one last time, taking care to wash her bald head, realizing that her mother had even plucked the hair from her womanly parts. The weight of sadness lifted her. Her corpse was shockingly light. By the following day, Shekiba and her father were back in the field to open the earth once more. They did not bother to tell the rest of the family. Her father read a prayer over the mound of dirt. They looked at each other, quietly wondering of them would join the others first. Shekiba was left with her father. A cousin stopped by to tell them of an upcoming wedding and took back news of the new widower to the rest of the clan. The Hawks descended on the house, extending their condolences, but only after they advised Shekiba's father that he now had an opportunity to begin again with a new life. They named a few families with eligible daughters in the village, most of them only a few years older than Shekiba. But her father was so heartbroken and fatigued that his family could not manage to arrange a new wife for him. Shekiba came of age with only her father to turn to, his sparse words, his lovely eyes. She worked beside him day and night. The more she did, the easier it was for him to forget that she was a girl. He began to think of her as a son, sometimes even slipping and calling her by her brother's names. The village chattered about them. How could a father and a daughter live alone? Sympathy gave way to criticism. Ismail and Shekiba grew even more distant from the outside world. The clan did not want to be associated with them. The village had no interest in a scarred old man and his even more scarred daughter's son. Over the years, Ismail lulled himself into believing that he had always lived without a wife. He had always had only one child. He managed by ignoring everything. He was the only person who did not see Shekiba's marred face and did not notice that as a young woman she might need some direction from a female. She bled every month. He pretended not to smell the soiled rag that she would keep soaking and hidden behind the stack of logs in their two-room home. And when he heard her shed tears, he shrugged her sniffles off as touch of flu. Shekiba's father took his daughter's son to the field to help him manage their small plot of land. She hoed, she slaughtered, and she chopped as any strong-backed son would do for his father. She made it possible for Ismail to go on believing that life had always been father and son. Shekiba proved to be able-bodied, affirming her father's confidence in her ability to manage the firm. Her arms and shoulders knotted with muscle. Years passed. Shekiba's features grew coarser. Her palms and soles were thick and calloused. Every day, Ismail's back hunched more. His eyes saw less, and his needs grew. There were days Shekiba was left to run the entire farm and the house on her own. Had Shekiba been any other girl, she probably would have felt lonesome in this solitary life, but her circumstances were different. The children nearby would always point and tease, as would their parents. Her appearance was shocking everywhere except at home. People who are beset by tragedy once and twice are sure to grieve again. Fate finds it easier to retrace its traits. Shekiba's father became weaker, his voice raspier, his breath shallower. One day, as Shekiba watched from a wall of stone and mud, he grabbed his chest. He took 2 steps and crumpled to the ground with a sickle in his grip. Shekiba was 18 years old, but she knew what to do. She dragged her father's body back to the house on a large cloth, stopping every few steps to adjust her grasp and to wipe away the tears that trickled down the right side of her face. The left side of her face remained stoic. She laid the body in the living room and sat at his side, repeating the 4 or 5 Quranic verses that her parents had taught her until the sun came up. In the morning, she began the ceremony she had performed too often in her short life. She undressed her father, careful to keep his private areas hidden beneath a rag. The ritual washing should have been done by a man, but Shekiba had no one to call on. She would rather have invited Allah's wrath into their home than turn to those vile people. She bathed him, turning away as she poured water onto his mad parts, and blindly wrapping his stiff body in a cloth, as she and her mother had done with her sister. She dragged him back outside and opened the earth one final time to complete her family's interment. Shekiba chewed her lips and debated digging one more spot for herself, thinking there would be no one left to do so when it came her turn. Too tired to do anything more, Shekiba said a few prayers and watched her father disappear under clods of earth, disappear like her sister, her brother, and her mother. She walked back to the hollow house and sat silently, afraid, angry, and calm. Shekiba was alone. How are we feeling? What do we think? What do we think? How was Shekiba's storyline for you guys? On to the next chapter. Chapter 3. Rahima. We wouldn't be the first. It's been done before. You're listening to that lunatic Shema and the story about your precious grandmother? It wasn't my grandmother. It was... I don't care. All I know is that woman makes my head ache. Arif John, I think it would be wise for us to consider this for everyone's sake. And what good will come of it? You see everyone who has done it before? They all have to change back in a few years. It doesn't help anything. But Arif John, she could do things. She could go to the stores. She could walk her sisters to the school. Do what you want. I'm going out. I listened carefully from the hallway, just a few feet from the bedroom we all shared. Our kitchen was behind the sitting room, a few pots and a gas burner. Our home was spacious, built in a time when my grandfather's family had more. Now these walls were bare and cracking and looked more like those of our neighbors. When I heard Father Jean strain to get up, I quickly tiptoed, my bare toes silent on the carpet. When I was sure he was gone, I came back to the living room to find my mother lost in thoughts. Mother Jean. Oh yes, Betchem. What is it? What were you and Father Jean talking about? She looked at me and bit her lip. Sit down, she said. I sat cross-legged in front of her, careful that the hem of my skirt reached over my knees and covered my calves. You remember the story your Khala Shaima told the other night? The one about our great. You're worse than your father sometimes. Yes, that one. I think it is time we change something for you. I think it would be the best if we let you be a son for your father. A son? It's simple, but it's done all the time, Rahima Jan. I think how happy that would make him. Just think. And you could do so many things that your sisters wouldn't be able to do. She knew how to pique my interest. I cocked my head to the side and waited for her to go on. We could change your clothes and we'll give you a new name. You'll be able to run to the store anytime we need anything. You could go to school without worrying about the boys bothering you. You could play games. How does that sound? It sounded like a dream to me. I thought of neighbors' sons, Jamil, Fahim, Bashir. My eyes widened at the thought of being able to kick a ball around the street as they did. Mother Jean wasn't thinking about the boys in the street. She was thinking of the empty cupboard. She was thinking of Father Jean and how much he had changed. We were lucky when we brought home some money from an odd job here or there. Every once in a while, his mind focused enough and he was able to tinker with an old engine and breathe life back into it. His small earnings were spent unevenly on his medicine and keeping us clothed and fed. The more Mother Jean thought about it, the more she realized how desperate our situation was becoming. Come with me. There's no reason to delay anything. Your father is taking more and more medicine these days. Your Khala Shaima is right. We need to do something or we're going to be in real trouble. We girls were nervous about getting sick. We worried that if we did, we would have to take the same medicine that Father Jean took. It made him do funny things, behave in funny ways. Mostly, he wanted to lie about the house and sleep. Sometimes, he said things that didn't make sense. And he never remembered anything we said. It was worse when he didn't take his medicines. He had broken nearly everything in the house that could be broken. The dishes and glasses survived only because he lacked the energy to pull them from the cabinet. Anything within the reach had already been thrown against the wall and smashed to pieces. A ceramic urn, a glass plate that Mother Jean had received as a gift. They were casualties of the war inside my Father Jean's head. Father Jean had fought with the Mujahideens for years, shooting at the Russian troops that bombarded our town with rockets. When the Soviets finally slinked back to their collapsing countries, Father Jean came home and prayed that life would return to normal, though few people could recall such a time. That was 1989. In that year, he returned home to his parents, who barely recognized him as a 17-year-old boy who had left home with a gun slung over his shoulder in the name of God and his country. His mother and father hurriedly arranged a marriage for him. As a 24-year-old, he was long overdue, and they thought a wife and children would bring him back to normal. But Father John, just like the rest of the country, had forgotten what normal was. Mother John was barely 18. When they were wed, I imagine she must have been terrified on her wedding night, as I was on mine. Sometimes I wonder why did she not warn me. But I suppose those are not the things women speak of. As the country planned for new beginnings, so did my parents. My sister Shala came first, followed by Perveen and me. Then came Rohila and Sitara. We were all a year apart and close enough in age that only our mother could tell us apart once we were walking. But with one daughter after another, Mother John did not become the wife Father John expected. Even more sorely disappointed was my grandmother, who had respectively borne 5 sons and only 1 daughter. Things fell apart at home just as they did across the country when Russia left. While the Afghan warriors turned their guns and rockets on each other, Father John tried to settle into life at home. He tried to work alongside his father as a carpenter, but a man who had been taught to only destroy found it hard to create. Loud sounds jarred him. He grew frustrated and drifted back into the warlord Abdul Khalik he fought under. Warlords were Afghanistan's new aristocracy. Allegiance to a man with a local clout meant a better life. It meant an income when there otherwise would be none. It wasn't long before Father John had oiled his machine gun, slung it over his shoulder, and gone off to fight again, this time in Abdul Khalik's name. He returned home every so often. When he returned the first time and found that Mother John had given birth to yet another girl, he walked out. It was me, and returned to killing fields with fresh anger. Mother John was left behind with a house full of girls and only bitter in-laws to turn to. We lived in a small 2-room house, part of family's compound. War pushed families together. 2 of my uncles were killed in the fighting. My uncle's wife died, giving birth to her 6th child. The thing is that this is the reality of women back home. They can't bear to have another child, but yet they have another child in hopes of it being a boy. Until he could remarry 2 months later, his children were cared for by my mother and my other aunts. We should have felt like one big family. We should have been kind to each other, but there was resentment, there was anger, there was jealousy, there was, as there would be in the rest of the country, civil war.